Batora. Lost Haven is a gorgeous game that is available to try at the February Steam Next Fest. Developed by Stormind Games and published by Team 17, Batora is undoubtedly the most exquisite game I have ever played, and I never wanted it to end. Batora begins with a brief backstory on how you got to Earth and the introduction of the main protagonist. You play as Avril, a 16-year-old girl with extraordinary and otherworldly powers, and travel through a story-driven action RPG where your choices shape the narrative. Avril's powers come from two entities, the sun and the moon, and she uses those powers to fight enemies and solve puzzles. As you explore the world and pursue your goals, you face enemies in both hack and slash and twin-stick shooter combat. The enemies are a mix of physical, orange, and mental, purple, damage dealers, and you must switch back and forth to deal the right damage to the right enemy. The ultimate test of my understanding of the game's mechanics came when I faced a boss at the end of the demo. It switched up its attack patterns, and you'd have to match it in physical or mental attacks while constantly dodging around the arena to deal effective damage. It was a fun fight and the highlight of the demo. Outside of the combat, a handful of puzzle sections were introduced, but nothing too mind-blowing. And, of course, there's a story here, as I was thrown into what seemed the third or fifth hour of the game. I was a little confused about what had been happening, even if the demo attempted to fill in the blanks. The long short of what I gathered was that Earth was destroyed, and the protagonist was transported off-world for some reason. Who knows? But the world seems relatively interesting, and there are decisions to be made to help shape the story. The first was choosing whether to kill or spare a character that had done bad things, and the second was of two good characters to save. I would stick by my choice in this regard, but what I chose got the father of a friend killed, and hearing them tell me how evil I am afterwards was hurtful. Now, I mentioned above how the Diablo style of games are not my favorite, but where this has an isometric point of view, the gameplay is not dungeon crawler related at all. In fact, it is actually a twin-stick shooter, at least if we classify it as a single genre. Avril can make use of the powers bestowed upon her in two ways: the power of the sun, as indicated when she glows orange, or more up close and personal, meaning she can hack at enemies with her sword. The other power is that of the moon. She is purple when that is active, and as the moon is traditionally something we don't get direct influence from, unlike the rays from the sun, the combat options here are also different, allowing for a shooting system instead. If the game was just content with giving you two different ways of interacting with the world, that could have been plenty, but they went a few steps further. The power of the sun impacts Avril in a physical sense, while the moon impacts her mentally, and should either of those energy sources be depleted, it is game over. Where things can get complicated is that if you are embracing the power of the sun and wailing on enemies with your sword, you can still take damage from those enemies aligned with the moon, so you have to be aware of both at all times. Beyond that, if you are aligned with the sun and start to use your sword on enemies powered by the moon, you won't deal as much damage to them, so you have to swap back and forth all the time, in order to get out of combat in one piece. For those thinking that you can just use the power you like to beat down on all that oppose you, that is possible, but none of the enemies hang back and wait for you to be done. With your current target, you will be bombarded at all times, ensuring that you have to stay moving, as well as swapping, if you want any chance of victory. Thankfully, the game does have some puzzles to solve, which can give you time to recharge yourself, letting you enjoy a peaceful moment or two. The puzzles, at least the ones in the demo, were not especially difficult, but they still required a little thought to solve. Basically, they are not the kind you can just walk straight through, but they shouldn't keep you from progressing. But puzzles are not the only time you will have to get your brain working, as the game will present you with choices, quite often, and you will need to decide for yourself what action you will take. Some actions can have limited repercussions at the moment the choice is made, but later on, it has the potential to impact something far greater, and of course, your actions will influence how people react to you. While the gameplay is a very interesting idea, the controls are a bit too loose and finicky. Mouse sensitivity is much too high, making it very easy to overshoot targets. Players would need to manually make adjustments in Windows to compensate, then readjust again after exiting Batora, Lost Haven. There are also no direct camera controls, with the screen turning and zooming automatically depending on the fight and exploration. There are also currently no options to rebind keys or customize the experience. Batora. Lost Haven is unfortunately filled with lots of graphical bugs. On both the highest and lowest settings there was frequent screen tearing, texture pop-in, and even sudden black screens. While errors quickly disappeared as quickly as they appeared, they were consistent enough to be unpleasant. However, these were only visual and did not stop progression or require any reloading. The in medias res approach is a bit jarring, as none of the characters are properly introduced. Avril, Mila, Sun, Moon, and Batora aren't given established personalities or clear backstories yet are treated as if players should already have deep attachments. This will hopefully be adjusted for the full game, with some kind of early introduction while the Earth is still whole. Additionally, the current voice acting ranges from average to poor and may be worth another pass or new talent. There are at least large teases that the game will go somewhere beyond Gria, as it is just one of the 4 elemental planets mentioned by Batora. These other worlds will likely be a host of new enemies, gameplay, and plot. New zones being placed either before or after Gria will give more opportunities to flesh out the characters, and onboard players to Batora. Lost Haven-esque gameplay concepts in a smooth way. Batora Lost Haven has the potential to be something really special, given the depth of replayability from its choice system to the exhaustive combat options. My time with the game was short, as these things usually are, but I really did enjoy my time with it. It wasn't an easy game to play as the combat system required me to constantly adapt and failure meant death and I died a lot, but it was fun, nonetheless. Right now, there is no release date, outside of sometime this year, but if you have any desire to play a game that will challenge you, has interesting characters and a wicked art style, then this one should be on your radar.